everybody, it's Drybear. We're finishing up our witch leveling builds by looking into minions in general, and today I want to share with you my fire minion leveling build. Now, there's a couple things to know about minions and how they function in Path of Exile 2, and really what you're going to get out of playing a minion build. There is some major downsides with running with a minion build early, but I can definitely tell you that if you plan out your build properly or use a build that is recommended, you can very easily run with minions from the start of the campaign all the way to the end of Cruel and into endgame, where you'll have to figure out what your endgame strategy is going to be. Now, a couple challenges with minions in general is that they are entirely insulated for the most part from all of your stats. So if you run with physical minions and you get physical damage, it's not going to apply to your physical minions. If you get fire minions and you give yourself elemental damage or fire damage, it's not going to apply to your fire minions. Same thing for cold or poison, that kind of thing. So you can't double dip without some very specific keystones in order to gain what you need for that build. Another challenge with minions in general is that they also are quite squishy when they start out. Now, most of my leveling builds, I recommend getting your strength and your damage from the passive skill tree, and then get your survivability from your gear, because there's just so much more survivability in base value available in gear, and there's so much more available damage inside the skill tree that when you're trying to level and level efficiently, I always recommend going for pure damage in the skill tree, and then just make sure you upgrade your armor, your gear, boots, gloves, accessories, everything to keep yourself tanky. However, in this build specifically, I tried it multiple different ways, and in my opinion, the best way to do this is to actually get survivability for the minions and also be able to get revive time for them as well, which will make a very big difference in how you use these minions for leveling. So for this build, we're going to be using the Arsonists, which do their own fire damage, as well as have an explosion on top of everything. We're going to run Fire Wall, which will scale off our spell damage and our fire damage, and on top of the fact that you will have projectiles that travel through the firewall and gain fire damage as well, which works perfectly with the Arsonists. We're going to give them Martial Tempo and Scattershot, which we will see when we go over the build specifically, and that means that they shoot 3 projectiles and way faster, and as long as the projectiles are traveling through a firewall, you get a whole bunch of extra damage on top of that. Then we'll supplement with having Raging Spirits or Unearth or Raise Zombie as temporary minions that we can either detonate or scale up, and we'll get 2 Skeletal Warriors that will beef out as our frontline tank in order to get them going and protected in the early stages of the game, so we have the damage scaling off of that. As you move into late stage leveling, like going into like the middle towards the end of normal and then going into Cruel, then you can just start using things like flammability. I also like leveling a little bit with like Solar Orb for extra damage. You can actually get a couple Solar Orbs on the ground dealing damage, and then you can just start putting flammability down to reduce the amount of fire resistance they have, and it just gives you a very easy way to deal damage to the target. You can stand behind your minions, and if you're spamming Raging Spirits or spamming Unearth/Zombies, they'll just be blocking projectiles, taking shots, exploding, dealing damage, while your Arsonists are going to town on the target, blasting them into next week. And of course, I have a handy dandy one sheet for this one. This one we do run a lot of abilities that you can socket in 2 skill gems into, like support gems to function. It's very straightforward. I recommend getting a Siphoning Wand so you can get power charges for your zombies, and then just getting a Rattling Scepter in your offhand to run with 2 Skeletal Warriors, which we'll use as base. The rest of your spirit is either going to go into, 1 Raging Spirit and then Arsonist, or just pure Arsonist if that's what you're looking for, with the Infernalist overall Ascendancy being put together on top of it. And of course, if you don't like the one sheet, I do have a separate build out on Mobiletics here for the full leveling build with some gear options, the best in slot stats. You'll want to look for those while leveling, the abilities with their gems, and of course the talent tree listed here that we'll go over in the build explanation portion. All right, let's go over the build in general and what you need to know about how it functions. Keep in mind that you'll start unlocking better and better options of these as you go along. Once you get the Infernalist Ascendancy, you can unlock the Infernalist like Hellhound, which makes the build even better, and all of that scales really well. And of course, once you start unlocking, Jeweler's Orbs that you can add to things to make them 3-socket, 4-socket, 5-socket, as you push towards endgame and into endgame, everything gets better. But the core of this is going to be around dealing damage with your minions. So our goal is to get Arsonists, and as many Arsonists as we can, because they will be throwing grenades that deal fire damage. On the Arsonists, they have a Firebomb projectile, and they have an Explosive Demise ability, which you won't use as much unless you're trying to burn down a single target like a rare or a boss, but you don't really want to be detonating your skeletons Ideally, you're only detonating like your Raging Spirits, your Unearthed minions, or your zombies. The temporary minions that are time limited, you don't really want to be detonating your skeletons for that. Now, the next thing that you want to do is you want to quickly run over and get a flame wall from the sorceress tree. Your main set is intelligence already, everything lines up, and this doesn't require a weapon. So you can just grab this from any skill gem that you want to add to that as well. When you have firewall down, some people like Fortress, some don't. I tend to like it for this because what you can do is you can actually, instead of putting firewall on the enemies, you can actually just surround your arsonist in the firewall. And again, as long as their projectiles travel through the firewall, every projectile will gain bonus fire damage. So sometimes I'll put a firewall around my arsonist and a firewall around the enemies, and then no matter what, all the projectiles that are going through will catch on fire and deal damage, which is super cool. Then I like running magnified effects, just give you a little bit more area so you can kind of play around it, or just gives you that kind of beast. By default, you can have 3 firewalls up before they start disappearing. So you want to just kind of start spreading those around and getting fire everywhere. But the main goal being that you you ignite the targets that you're targeting, and also so that these projectiles can start flying through the firewall. You notice that now they'll gain this fire effect and they'll still have that fire trail. That's where the damage is coming from on this. You really want to make sure that there's always a firewall down on the ground. Next, we want to start working in the skeletal warriors. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick up a rattling scepter. You want to make sure you keep this up to date because it will make the level of the skeletal warrior minions that it comes with better and better. It will always only give you 2 skeletal warrior minions, and I highly recommend using the scepter instead of just adding the gem because you don't want to consume spirit to get these. For these 2, I like running Meat Shield as well as Last Gasp. But the main reason for this is that you get enough HP out of these. It gives you a very large increase. So you can see they have 1200 HP right now. If I take this out, they have 824. It is a very noticeable increase on the HP that they have. And then Last Gasp means that when they die, they'll sit at 0 HP for 4 seconds and then die. And this is super important not only for keeping things up, being able to use Pain Offering on them as well. So you can put a Pain Offering onto one of them and it'll give you a buff for all your minions there, but also is important for not resetting your respawn timer. And this is one of the biggest limiting factors for minion builds in Path of Exile 2. It's something that I desperately hope that they change about minions in Path of Exile 2, because it's kind of ridiculous and a little silly that they decided to ship even early access with something like this. So what am I talking about when I talk about the revive minion timer? So any minion that has a revive on it, it'll tell you on it that it has a revive. So a reviving minion is a minion that will always revive itself automatically because you're committing some kind of resource to have them available, either an item for these or spirit for these, or having this character here as well as part of your passive. Reviving minions after a delay will respawn. The other ones don't. So like Ray zombies are not reviving minions. They're time limited minions, so they'll despawn after a time period. Raging Spirits will despawn after a time. Unearthed will despawn after a time. So look at the top right corner. We can even zoom in to make sure you guys can see it. When I lose a minion that revives, it will start a overall timer for that minion. So I can quickly, let's take my offering and remove the cooldown from it so that we can do it multiple times in a row if I wasn't blind. There we go. Okay, so if I kill a minion right now, you'll notice that there is now a timer right there. So this is the reforming minions. Your persistent minions will respawn. So if I kill another one, it will start the timer again, reforming minions. You have only like 5 nodes total in your skill tree that will change the amount of time that this timer hits, and you will get all of your minions back when this timer hits 0. The problem with it is, so if I kill a minion here, you'll see the timer starts. If I kill another minion before it ends, it will actually reset the timer to a brand new timer. So we'll reset it, and it'll reset it, and it'll keep resetting it over and over and over until you have no minions left. As minions die, the reviving minions die, the timer keeps resetting without respawning anything. So your goal is to get to a period where you're actually not losing any minions for the entirety of that duration, right? You can't lose a minion until this timer is up of a reviving minion. Otherwise, it'll reset and not give you any minions. I desperately hope that this is changed in the future so that it's like a rolling number per minion, or at least it's just like a wave-based thing that the timer goes to 0, revives whatever missing minions there are, and restarts. rather than it being like a reset timer so that when a minion dies, it starts over, and then if a new minion dies, it starts over again. You can, like, worst case scenario, you can have 10 skeletons, you lose a skeleton, it starts the timer, then you lose a skeleton, it resets the timer, and you just slowly stagger, you know, their deaths over and over and over until you get down to no skeletons, and it's been a minute and you still haven't respawned anything. So that's really, really bad. So the way we're going to solve this is twofold. Firstly, one of the most valuable stats you can get early on is going to be minions revive faster. This makes this time window shorter. I think at default it's like 8 seconds or something. You can get it down to 6 very easily, and you can even get it down to 5 or 4 much faster. And again, that's how much time you need to have in between minion deaths, not total, in between minion deaths that are reviving. So we're going to come over here and we're going to get minions revive faster. It's one of the reasons why we don't grab spell damage and minion damage coming out of the start gate here. But we'll grab that. We can get 25% more over here. And there's another one here that does 25% more on top of that. So you can actually do a total of, what is that, 65% faster on that timer, which is massive. You will absolutely notice this while playing. It is very, very important that you get minions revive faster when you're leveling with minions. It'll make a huge difference. Next, once you got this basic down, the core of this is going to be using your firewall with your arsonists and keeping them alive. And again, because we're starting with survivability for the minions, it's going to go really well. What I like to do, since it's early on in the game, is to supplement with solar orb. We're going to be increasing our fire damage through items and other bonuses, which means that we do good fire damage. We also like adding fire damage because we're going to scale it with flammability, so we can actually have more fire exposure for penetration through fire resistance. And we're also going to have some extra ignite chances with this as well, which can help with other parts of the build later on. So what I like doing is actually supplementing with solar orb. This is just an AoE that pulses and does damage. What I like doing is I like running overabundance and concentrated effect. So the aura is very small, but it does a good amount of damage. So you can just stack it on a single target and burn that way. So what I like to do is, like, when I'm moving to a new pack, I will flame wall, 2 flame walls, 2 solar orbs, and then I'll just go and start reviving anything that's dead. So either using Ray Zombie or using Unearth. If you're early, like, you know, pre-level 10, you'll have to use that, but Ray Zombie on any corpses, and then you go again. So firewall, solar orb, res, firewall, solar orb, res. And that's kind of what you'll need to kill basically everything except for super tanky single target. Now, the kicker for single target is going to be Pain Offering. So what this does, you can only sacrifice a skeleton, like a reviving minion for this. You will target them and turn them into a buff, but they will lose their life. Keep in mind that we have the 2 free super tanky skeletal minions, the warriors here, and we have the extra arsonists. We want to make sure that if at all possible, we're always using Pain Offering on a warrior, not the arsonist. The warrior is cannon fodder, the arsonist is where our damage is from. And you can target this by aiming at them, and it will sacrifice them and create an aura. However, we can put some pretty cool stuff on Pain Offering. I like putting Expanse. It gives it a cooldown, but a much wider area of effect. I don't see myself spamming this ever, so 6 seconds is plenty for me. And then having Font of Blood gives you some regeneration for you and your allies. Super useful for the big fights where there's lots of damage going on as well. So when you see an opportunity, either you see a warrior about to die, or you need some single target damage, throw out that skeletal offering and buff everything around you so you're dealing damage. So you're firewall into solar orb, res. Oh no, the warrior's about to die, sacrifice him, get some extra damage out, firewall. And you're just gonna have so many minions, so many ignites, so much burn, so much single target damage. And then when you get to it, you'll be able to work in flammability as well, which will give you a nice fire exposure on that as well. And if you want to, I'm not sure which one's better here, to be honest with you. I think Raging Spirits probably feels better, but Raging Spirits is an aura that will cost you 30 spirit. When you put down any fire spell, usually Firewall, you'll be able to get these time-limited, very squishy minions. You can cause them to explode, you can detonate them, do some cool damage on them, and they generally just block attacks, which is nice, but you will have to sacrifice spirit, which means that if I turn this off, I should be able to get, 1 more arsonist. So it's like a difference of like +1 arsonist or having some cannon fodder in front of you. I think that this is more damage, but the Raging Spirits probably feels better in general because you'll be able to just block attacks and absorb things. But I think this is probably going to be more single target, so you have to make that call for yourself. Now let's talk about the talent tree and what you should expect going for this. Again, our main goal is to get A, enough survivability for our minions to stay alive and not be dead all the time, and B, be able to revive them faster, so you're not hitting that window as often. Not only are you going to be able to have minions have higher uptime with a faster revive, but it also means you're less likely to hit the unfortunate scenario where you're about to revive minions and one of them dies, resetting the timer and not reviving anything. Until they fix this, minion revive is like the most valuable stat you can get early on. So we're gonna go instead, and I tried this before. I tried doing, minion damage and spell damage all the way up here. You can actually get some nice damage here. You can do bone if you wanted to do extra physical. You can even cut over this way if you wanted to in the early game. But personally for me, I think it is far more valuable to come up through here. I would either get mana regen or more, even better is energy shield here, plus the free intelligence energy shield, then grab increased life, and minions revive faster. Even just the 15% is going to feel really good at the start of the game. Then I would go straight up here, grab whatever stats you need for gear and bonuses, come right over here, get minion life, revive faster, and you gain life when minions revive, which gives you survivability. And then you want to do maximum life and maximum life. By this time, your minions will start surviving a lot longer and giving you really good value, especially if you're running an Unearth early on in the game. This will give you a nice big bonus at the beginning of the game. Then we want to grab the increased damage nodes that exist here, right into the movement speed and attack and cast speed. Attack and cast speed is going to be massive for the Arsonist, because we're already running martial tempo, which is super huge, and scattershot, but also the movement speed's really good for the slow minions like the skeletal warriors and the zombies. Then what I would do is only grab the damage. If you want to, you can get accuracy. It is going to be valuable, but I recommend then just cutting straight over here, coming up and getting the revive faster, plus all of the attack and cast speed, damage, and defense from this area here. That's going to be your biggest early game gain, is getting revive faster, damage and HP, attack speed, cast speed, that sort of thing. That's going to make your build just start wrecking going through. You could do Trial of Sekhmet at like level 20. I did it under geared, under leveled, and I just blew through the trial to get the Ascendancy. All that's super easy. Then from there, there's a couple really big nodes that you want to work your way to as you move into Cruel and towards endgame. The first one is going to be this one here, Necromantic Talisman. This allows you to give whatever stats you have on your amulet to your minions. You lose out on some spirit by doing this, but it does give you the chance to give your minions life regeneration, casting speed if you run casting minions, maximum life, resistances. All of those things give you a really easy way to stack them up. And you can get like 10 to 20 life per second on your amulet. You give that to the minions and they're going to be super, super stable. Then you have these nodes here. This one's going to be really nice. You can get increased damage here, plus bonus damage is chaos. You can also get crit chance. You can also get these nodes here, which is max life, and chaos resistance, which will help them with chaos attacks and poison. Remember, poison is chaos. And the last one's super great, 3% of their life per second when they regenerate, plus maximum life. These three nodes will give them even more survivability, which is great. Then you get even more survivability from these. So maximum life, recoup, resistances, all of that is really good. Then the next big one you want to target as you move up to the top of the tree is going to be this node here, Lord of Horrors. This is a global reduction on the spirit cost of all minions, which means that you will be able to get more minions out of it. This gets better and better as time goes on. Remember that when you upgrade your minion gems, they get cheaper. So you can actually get, cheaper spirit costs here and compound that with Lord of Horrors, which is even better. You also get increased damage, area of effect, which works great for Arsonists, increased maximum life, which is very good, plus more damage. All of that works really well together. Then the next one you're going to want to look for is right next to this here and right next to this area, which is going to be offerings. So you can come right over, get increased life on offerings so they don't die as easily, increased duration if you're running the bone offering for the extra, or pain offering for the extra buff, and then also being able to have recover 3% of life when you create an offering. Super strong. There's even some options up here if you really wanted to. For late game, you can get 40% minion damage if you have 2 offerings at once, and by the time you want to get this, you should have a lot of skeletons to sacrifice. You can even increase area of effect and maximum life and that sort of thing. And then by this time, you should be looking at the end of Cruel starting endgame, and that's when you'll start looking at an endgame build to to see where you want to take it next. When it comes to Ascendancy, we're going to run with Infernalist for this. It's a perfect synergy for this. You'll have to decide what you want to do here because there's actually several very interesting options for this. Your first one is going to be probably coming over here and getting the Hellhound. This works in twofold. It gives you more ignite in your build, but also he works as an absorb for you by taking part of the damage you would take for him instead, which gives you some survivability, and naturally he has a lot of HP. As you move later into the game, you may want to work in your own Skeletal Warriors, or maybe just put Meat Shield onto your Infernal Hellhound. I like Wildfire and then Resistance for him for the elemental damage that he takes, which is nice. But from there, if you want to start here, I would recommend for pure damage, just coming here and getting Pyromantic Pact. This converts your mana into Infernal Flame and then gives you a whole bunch of options for that. You'll deal damage to yourself, which you can convert with other options for defense on Elemental. And then moving past that, you can actually make it so that when you're high on Infernal Flame, you deal all of your minions and you gain bonus damage as fire, which can be scaled. And when you're low on Infernal Flame, when you get to your final Ascendancy, you can also contribute to Ignite Chance and the Ignite Magnitude. So all of this together with fire minions just works great. But there's some really strong defensive options over here. This one is one of the best ones in the game. This converts damage taken into different elements, and it also converts physical into chaos. So rather than needing evasion or armor, you can actually just run chaos resistance for a portion of it, which is great. This splits it up. You can stack fire resistance and chaos resistance, and this converts the damage you take on top of the Hellhound. Super survivable as an option for you there. The other thing I'll mention is that you can use things like the Siphoning Wand, which gives you a Killing Palm effect, so you can actually, execute an enemy that's low, get a power charge, and with Raise Zombie, it will actually consume the power charge to make the zombie stronger. If you wanted to, again, you can run Unearth to fix things up that way. And you have a couple things you can play around with, but the basic goal here is to firewall, solar orb, flammability, look for things to res, or if you want to, you can detonate minions to cause them to explode, or sacrifice a minion to give them all buffs, and you should be able to blow through the campaign as long as you're keeping up with your gear and paying attention. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.